Hello and welcome back to My Career So Far.
Episode 3 of the new series already. How have we got this far? It's madness.
We're in double digits for episodes now, by the way, so we're doing all right.
Is this officially the 10th episode of My Career So Far?
It is the 10th episode, and we've got an amazing guest for you. We've got the wonderful Andy Goulding.
Lots of great stories about his time in the industry so far. You'll hear about a lovely woman called Linda. About her struggles you're shaking your head at this. It's a great interview. You'll hear about a lovely woman called Linda taking the bins out, which sounds bizarre at the first, but you'll hear the context shortly.
And the sniffing of car stickers. If that entertains you, then you might as well stick around, because this is our interview with Andy Goulding.
Like the car stickers.
My Career So Far.
Andy Goulding, hello.
Hello, how are you? You all right?
Good.
Yeah, good.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on. I was I don't think I've ever actually sat down and spoke about my career before. But I'm also glad that it's my career up to now, because that means there may be more to come. I don't know, maybe.
Your career so far.
This could be the end. Yeah, my career so far, up to this podcast where, I don't know, I might say something. We might all get cancelled by the end of this pod.
Congrats. It's like this is your life, but like the worst possible version.
Why have you brought on?
Please, no, we haven't prepared anyone, unfortunately. Maybe in the future if our budget gets... We haven't got a budget in the first place.
Okay, well, you can always get Jo Russell. She knows a lot. She knows too much.
We've already had her on last series.
Yeah, I know. I've listened to Jo. That's why I can't... Why did you want to speak to me? Because you've had Stephanie Hurst, you've had Jo Russell. Well, okay, maybe I've got stuff to say. We'll wait and see.
Kira's got
5 hours has in store.
Kira's got... they'll make Kira's life a lot harder if it's a 5-hour interview. But you've got a lovely connection with the Midlands, Kira.
I have, but I feel like we shouldn't get to that too quickly.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
That was a lovely tease for you. I like that.
Exactly. First of all, how did you first get into radio?
I think there's a parallel between me and most of the other people that have been on this podcast, because firstly, I'm an only child, which I think a lot of radio presenters are. So you're used to just, sitting in a room on your own and setting up a pretend radio station. But there was always music in the house, because my dad was a big music fan, and a lot of that at the time came from radio. So I was getting up in the morning and the radio was always on, and it would probably be like Terry Wogan or something like that. And then for me, it wasn't necessarily about the music, but it was like the bits in between that interested me a little bit more, and I was quite fascinated by it. And then when you start listening to radio yourself, because I'm from the Northwest originally, and I think the Northwest probably the best for commercial stations. We had like Radio City and Key 103 and Rock FM, as well as the national stations. So I was always listening around. There was always stuff to listen to. And it was Rock FM that had an open day when I was like 10 or something like that. And I went, Dad, they've got an open day. We can go and have a look around the studios. And he was like, yeah, I'll take you to Preston. We'll go. I don't know whether you know, like Rock FM used to come from an old church.
Yeah.
Which is like
Red Rose Radio.
Yeah, Red Rose Radio, 9:99 a.m. And I was like fascinated firstly by that building, the fact that they put a radio station in an old church. So that was my day out. And I think then from that moment, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And when I was at school and we had to do work experience, I wrote to Red Rose Radio. I didn't actually tell the careers teacher. I wrote to Red Rose Radio. I want to come do my work experience here. And they wrote back and went, oh, yeah, well, if your school approves it. So I went and went. They said I could go to Preston. I didn't live anywhere near Preston, but that was like the first time I actually got my foot in the door. And then from then it was hospital radio and college radio and RSLs doing the 4-week licenses. So it was all that experience that then led to me actually getting paid to do it. So that's the background. That's how it started.
I suppose, like the average person, they'll be listening to the radio and they'll hear like Lewis Capaldi say, or like Benson Boone or whoever, and they'll say, oh, that's fine. And then the links and the presenters are sort of like an afterthought. Whereas for people who are more into radio, I suppose, like hearing like a sweeper or like a jingle and just something just clicks in the back of your brain. Was that what sort of happened for you?
Yeah, and still does now. Like if I'm in the car with people and the radio's on, I'll like turn the volume down when the songs are on, and then when the links are on, I'll like, turn the radio up. And people start talking, and I go, shh, they're doing the link about something, and I want to hear how they've literally, even if it's just like a 10, 15 second link, how have they constructed this? How are they like doing this like a little bit of entertainment over a 15-second intro. So yeah, that's what really got me into it. And that's how I started playing around with it as well. When I first started doing hospital radio, I don't think I ever tried to be someone else, but I was always listening to like how the professionals, if you like, were doing it. How would they come out of a song and go into a song, and how they would craft that link. So yeah, that was always interesting to me. And then I discovered like late night radio. When you're old enough, there was like a lot of late night phone-ins. There's a guy called Alan Bezic who used to do Red Rose Radio, and like James Whale, a guy called James Stanage. And there was a lot of really good like late night phone-ins that, to be honest, I don't think you could get away with it now. I know there's phone-ins on LBC and Talk Radio, but back then you could get away with a lot more. And I thought that was fascinating because they had like all these callers coming in and they would be saying anything to them. So this like whole world of colour opened up through a speaker. So yeah, that was absolutely fascinating. And that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to, I didn't want to be on the radio. I wanted to make radio like that got me interested. I wanted to be, especially as well, as I mentioned, being an only child, you kind of like think that these people on the radio are actually your friends. And that's the old adage of like, you know, you're always talking to one person. And then if you are that person, that, you know, you do get that connection as a listener from way back.
To be fair, when you say about late night radio, I think we were just in the end of the really good part, me and Josh were, of late night radio. And I think in the last 10 years or so, the magic of it has slightly fallen away. So I think there's still a lovely little, I'd say up until about mid-10s, where late night radio is still so special.
Yeah. And now it's all love songs and like, it's just a little bit boring. But I still do like listening to be honest, that gap, late night radio has kind of like changed me now. I listen to a podcast, you know, you go to bed, I'll put a podcast on and they'll set, you know, 10, 15 minutes for it to go off. So late night radio is actually still there for me because, you know, radio has changed and, you know, podcasts are radio. It's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, I suppose just listening habits have generally changed and like there's not necessarily less demand for it, but people just want to listen to more music and less about what Linda from down the road's up to about at like 2:30 in the morning. God knows what.
Why? What's she up to? What's she been doing, Josh? Linda. I've heard about Linda.
She's a right troublesome one. Linda. I was having a conversation. I was having a conversation about this with some mates earlier, and
about Linda.
Because about late night radio. Because someone I know is a desktop, like a phone operator for 5 Live, and he's just saying it's quite magical about just letting someone ramble on for 5-10 minutes and then just taking it up to the news, and it's just like that sort of, I don't know, the magic of it all and the art to it.
Yeah, I think there's more of a niche now for phone-ins particularly, whereas, you know, it just used to be a phone-in and you could phone in and talk about anything, whether it be what you watched on TV or something that's gone in the news or sports. But now you've got Talk Sport, you've got Talk Radio, you've got, you know, various news stations that invite you to phone in, and they've all got their own agenda. So you kind of politically know where you're going to be sitting and what you're going to be getting from listening to NBC or Talk Radio or something like that. So yeah, definitely. It's radio is niched, not just in the ways of music, like you've got decade stations now, like 80s, 90s or musicals, but it's the same with Talk Radio. I think exactly the same. You kind of like, you find your tribe by the station that you're listening to.
Now, you said you're from the Northwest, and I believe you studied at the University of Manchester, which is just down the road from us, doing media and business.
I did, yeah. So, University of Manchester degree is actually studied in Warrington, which I think is now as University of Chester, but on the certificate, it's Manchester. So yeah, that's where I studied. In fact, that's where I met a friend of mine who I haven't spoken to for years, but he was a mature student. So he was working in radio. He was in the sales team at a radio station and wanted to kind of like diversify a bit and get more into the production side and the actual radio side of it. So he quit his job in sales and he went on to do this course. And then after a year, he'd had enough and realised that he'd got a mortgage to pay. So he went back to working in sales. And then 2 years after that, when I graduated, well, it's been 3 years after the course, he gave me a call, said, this group that I'm working for, we're launching a brand new radio station for Wigan and St Helens, which is where I live. This is where I'm from. And it was an area that wasn't really served by anything else. As I say, there's a lot of great radio in the Northwest. There was Rock FM for Preston. There was Radio City for Liverpool. There was K103 for Manchester. But this was the little pocket of the Northwest that was underserved. And I think as part of their remit, they wanted local presenters. And so I'd done hospital radio and had been involved in the college station with a degree. He said, go in, have a chat and, see what's going on. And they offered me the evening show. So yeah, I'd like 6 months after I graduated, did a few months working at QVC, the shopping channel, answering the phones, because I've, media in it. And then, then I was back in my love of actually doing radio, and being paid to do it. So yeah, I started on the evening show on Wish FM from the back of doing that degree. So it wasn't really anything that I did on that degree or what I learned in that degree or that qualification. Again, like a lot of things that have happened in my career, it was people that I've met along the way that have opened doors to get me in.
Not necessarily what you know, but who you know is the adage that we're always
being
given.
in the right place at the right time. Yeah, exactly.
It must have been nice to be paid to do radio, though, for the first time.
Oh, it was very nice to be paid to do radio. And I was trying to think how much I was getting paid for that evening show. It must have been like 50 quid or something. It wasn't a lot. And I was still living at home with mum and dad. But I only actually did the evening show for, I'd say, 8 weeks. And then the guy who was doing the breakfast show had moved up. I think he was from the Midlands. He moved up to do the breakfast show and he just didn't like living in Wigan. I don't know why you wouldn't like living in Wigan. It's a great place. Hacker the dog's from Wigan. But yeah, he did the Friday morning breakfast show and he said, I've given it a go. But it's not for me. Find somebody else. Literally, it was fade us down at 10 a.m. on his last breakfast show and he didn't come back. So I got a phone call to go, Andy, Monday morning, can you just cover breakfast? Now, bear in mind, I was pretty much fresh out of university. I'd been paid to do radio for like 2 months. So I was still learning what I was doing. I was still finding my own style. So I ended up doing the breakfast show for a week, which became 2 weeks, which became 4.5 years. They just kept me on it. Again, I was just right place, right time, incredibly lucky and having people around me who guided me as a presenter. The mid-morning presenter actually was also the program controller, a guy called Steve Collins, who also used to be at Key 103. In fact, he'd sent me a number of rejection letters when I used to write to Key 103, but he was the guy who gave me my first proper job and then put me on breakfast. And he was the guy who guided me. He used to drive in every morning and then finish at 10 and he'd be there waiting for me with his long list of like, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. Because I hadn't got a clue how to put a breakfast show together. I didn't have a producer. I didn't have a co-host or anything like that. It was just me on my own, learning the trade as I was going on. So yeah, I got a lot of respect and a lot of time for Steve, who, gave me a proper big start, really.
And it's quite a big responsibility just coming out of uni and helping to launch a brand new local radio station. How did that feel?
It was so exciting. It was so exciting because I think as well, because the area needed a radio station and the team behind it, they'd all come from like, what is now Bauer, was EMAP at the time. There's a lot of people who'd worked at Red Rose Radio and Key 103. So like the sales team, the marketing team and things like that. And they weren't afraid to just do what they want. And because you weren't part of a bigger group, you were given a bit of free reign. So when we got that first radar came in, I think we came in at like 19% reach on the first radar. And then the next one was up to 21. So it was really exciting to be part of that. And I had to do my first road show because I got into radio because I like to sit in a room and talk to myself. I didn't want to stand on a stage and have people looking at me with warm pints of beer at a summer festival or whatever. And that was the first time I had to go on stage and do that. So I learned how to do that. But yeah, really exciting. It was a really fun time as well to be in radio because you could do what you want. You could be creative. There weren't really any guidelines as long as you didn't swear or do anything ridiculous, which I did. I made a lot of mistakes during that 4 years. I went to say, have you ever seen Private Parts, the Howard Stern film?
No.
Okay. Go, if you can find, I don't know whether it's on Netflix or stuff, but Howard Stern is a shock jock from America, and he must have started in like 80s or 90s. It was massive. And he still is really big in America, but he was massive at the time. And he wrote a book, and then they made it into a film. And I went to see this film, and I went, right, I got so many ideas, so much inspiration of what he was doing and the stuff that he was doing. Like you'd never get away with now. We really shouldn't have got away with then. But I didn't really push it that far. But it made me be probably a little bit too more adventurous than I should have been. I was like really pushing the envelope, and I got myself into a lot of trouble. I got people fired from jobs because I did phoners about who you'd like to send to the moon. And this guy started naming people. He named his boss and why he didn't like his boss and what his boss was doing. I put this guy on air. I didn't think about, I didn't think about the time, about the repercussions of it. Anyway, he got fired. I was on the front page of the Wigan Evening Post for getting the man fired. My mum was furious. But you learn from your mistakes like that. But yeah, they were fun times, and I didn't get fired. He did.
His loss.
His loss. Yeah, shouldn't have phoned in the first place.
It's like Linda. Do you reckon Linda will be on the front page of the Wigan?
Yeah, Linda was his boss, to be honest. And to be fair, he had a point. She's the one, that Linda, 2:30 in the morning. She's up to. She's not taking the bins out. We know.
Oh, right, Zen.
I'll go then. After Wish, where did you end up next?
So after 4.5 years on the Wish FM breakfast show, I ended up at Signal One. Again, right place, right time. So I had a new program controller at Wish, guy called Kevin Howard, who had come from MFM, Marcher in Wrexham. Such a great guy, a guy who has kind of like always been there for me, either professionally or personally. He's such a great guy. He's running radio stations in Africa now, I think, Kevin. So I worked with him at Wish FM. I think he was about a year that he was there, and he kind of like made it a little bit more showbiz. He kind of like introduced me to people. We started having guests in. It was the time when Hearsay were big, and Kim Marsh from Hearsay was, she was the local celebrity. So we got her to come in the studio, and we did some stuff like that, which we'd never done before, because they always had that, we're only a bit of a small radio station, but he kind of like, think bigger. So Kevin was great. So he left Wish FM to go to Signal. My contract was coming up at Wish FM, and after 4.5 years on breakfast, and I was still living at home with my mum and dad, I thought, I could be here, for years to come and be a local celebrity, but I want to do something different now. And I want to go to a bigger station. I was talking to Kevin. Signal One, it was a massive station. And he said, actually, we're looking for a drive time presenter. He said, if you want to come down, we'll chat about that, and I'll show you around and we'll meet some people. I said, bear in mind, though, he said, probably whoever's on drive, I'd like to be in frame to eventually do breakfast when anything changes there. So I moved down to Signal One to do drive. And after 2 weeks, I think, on drive, Kevin said, I said you probably would end up doing breakfast one day, maybe in a couple of years. Yeah, he said, well, Jim, who's doing breakfast, Jim Davis, legend. It was Jim and Louise on breakfast. Jim's moving on. He's got a new gig somewhere else. So do you fancy doing breakfast? So I went, well, yeah. Yeah, I've done breakfast for 4.5 years. I'm no stranger to breakfast. So yeah, I was moved on to breakfast with Louise, who was such good fun. I didn't really know her, and it was quite odd because I didn't do a demo with her, or I didn't do a trial. It was just like, you're on with Louise. We'll go out for dinner, have a few wines, get to know each other. And then the first thing we did, actually, before we started the breakfast show, we had to do an interview with the Pet Shop Boys. And from that moment, I knew that we were going to get on because it was such good fun. Because Louise was from a theatre background and not necessarily come up from like hospital radio and stuff like everybody else. So she had a different kind of like way of thinking about radio. She was she was such a big personality. She was a local girl, and she kind of taught me like to be myself a little bit more and have fun. And at that moment with the Pet Shop Boys, where we were talking about what they get up to at parties and just having a laugh. They said it was one of the best interviews they'd ever done. And I thought, was it an interview? Did we actually talk about your album? But yeah, such good fun. And then I did, like, again, 4.5 years on the Signal One breakfast show with Louise. before I moved on again.
I mean, what was it like going from doing your Wish FM breakfast show by yourself, no producer, to suddenly having to present with someone else? Because you were saying how you got into radio because you liked talking to yourself in front of a microphone. What was the shift like?
Again, it's a completely new, different set of skills, because you come in to do a breakfast show on your own, or any show on your own, and you know where you're going with everything. So you know every link's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know when to get out. And then suddenly, when you're put on with somebody else, you've got to kind of step back. You know, if they've got a story, or if they've got a funny, or, you know, if they say something really funny, you think the link has ended here, let them have that funny. That is where the link ends. You've got to be not selfish. You can't think about yourself and how you want that link to sound. And you've got to kind of like plan a little bit more and be aware that, you know, and you have a bad day, they have a bad day, you have a good day, they have a good day. And you've got to kind of strike that balance. If there's one day you're feeling a bit down, or you've been dumped, or you're not feeling well, that the other person has really got to pull that show up. So you kind of like, you're not just presenting with a new set of skills, you're listening. Suddenly you've got to listen to somebody else and make that content rather than just thinking about yourself. So that was weird. And we didn't have a producer. So really we had to kind of like suss stuff out. But I'm quite easygoing, I'm quite laid back. So if Louise wanted to come in and do this, right, we're doing this link today, I've had this funny story. I was like, okay, we'll do that. So yeah.
But yeah, a nice little like balance and act about you two.
Yeah, it was fun, and had such a big station down there. I was quite surprised by, you know, you could go into a shop and somebody would recognise your voice, or you'd use a credit card and they'd recognise your name because like you were like Signal One. It was something else. It was a beast. And then I had to do the panto because I think they'd already agreed. Oh, yes, I did. Well done. I think they'd already agreed for Jim and Louise to do panto that Christmas. And so the arrangement in the station and the theatre had already been done. So they were, oh, you're doing panto as well? Like, am I? Oh, yes, you are. So yeah, so that was a new set of skills that I learned, doing panto, suddenly being on stage. I didn't just get my head around doing road shows for Wish FM, and then suddenly I was on stage at the Regent Theatre twice a day, every day for 4 weeks. So you do a breakfast show, 6 till 10, and then you go straight to theatre, little inflatable bed, have a sleep on the floor, do a matinee, go out, get something to eat, do the evening show, go home, go to bed, and then go up again at 4 and do it all over again. Yeah. That's another set of skills you got to learn, because obviously you sit in a radio studio and all you use is your voice, and then suddenly you're standing on a stage and they go, if you could move your arms a bit more, or actually if you could just move, that would be good. I'm like, I'm a radio presenter, I don't know. But the money was good. So yeah, and then you had your picture all around town. So suddenly you're on billboards everywhere for the panto, and I was writing for the local newspaper, so my picture was in the paper as well. And they used to do this big concert in the football stadium every summer. So yeah, it was such a big station. So I kind of learned to be a bit of a celebrity down there. I kind of enjoyed it a little bit, yeah.
What was your role in the panto?
I did quite a few. So my first role in Aladdin with the Chuckle Brothers, I was Abanazar, the baddie. And then it was, we did Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I think was the next one. And I was like the Wicked Queen's assistant. So kind of like still a bit of a baddie. And then I got to be the goodies. I got to be Dandini in Cinderella, the the prince's assistant. And then I did 6 years of pantos. And then for the other 3, I was somebody's dad, Cinderella's dad, Princess Jasmine's dad, King of Gooseland in 1 year. Even knew that was a part.
It's like they almost generated parts just to fit you in somewhere.
Just to put a radio presenter in, yeah. I used to be big, like back in that was the early noughties. Like you could go to any local panto and there'd be like a local radio presenter in there.
It's almost like this. I think Joe Russell was saying it. It's almost like back in the day, not back in the day, but in the noughties, it was a thing to be a local celebrity. As a local radio presenter, a lot of people knew who you were, whereas nowadays you don't get that. That must have been a weird feeling for people to know you.
Yeah, it was a bit, but then there's that anonymity as well, because it wasn't like everybody, you could walk down the street and nobody would know you are, but it was only every now and then where somebody would say, oh, yeah, I'm off the radio, but they would always follow it with something you'd said or something you'd done, or, oh, you two make me laugh in the morning, and that kind of thing. Oh, my dentist, dentist receptionist, she was always, she's excited every time I used to go every time I used to go in there. Who have you had in this week? Have you had any celebrities coming in this week? So yeah, it's quite nice to be, and that's a good thing about radio. Well, it's changed now because everybody's on social media and everything is filmed now. But like back in the early noughties, late 90s, early noughties, you were just a voice. You were a voice and a name, so you could walk down the street and nobody would recognise you. You could go to the changing rooms in the gym and you'd be fine. You didn't need to go into a cubicle. You'd be fine.
Where did you end up after that? I think I know, but I'll let you say it.
Go on then.
Oh. Well, you ended up in the Midlands.
I ended up in the... Well, I was in the Midlands. That's the strange thing about Stoke-on-Trent. It's kind of the Midlands, but not the Midlands. But yeah, so I moved down to Coventry, to Mercia. So again, 5 years on breakfast. And I got a call out of the blue from Mercia, who were looking for a new breakfast show. They'd had a temporary breakfast show on for about 6 months. So they wanted to do something different. And they said, oh, come down for a chat. And I didn't really know Coventry that much, but the appeal of it was that Mercia was part of GCAP, whereas I'd only ever worked for small groups. You've got GCAP, now Capital, and EMAP, now Bauer. So being part of this big group was the temptation for me. So they brought me down. We had a little bit of chat. In fact, we had quite a few chats because I was really unsure because I was having fun in Stoke-on-Trent and I've made friends down there and I kind of got a new life down there. But at the back of my mind, it was, well, if you want career progression, if you can get your foot in the door here, it's a GCAP that obviously then opens the door to Capital or BRMB or anything like that. So I went for it and took the job on the Mercia breakfast show. I had about 3 or 4 months left on my contract. So I think I only started in the September. So I was going down like once every other week, just down to Coventry to start planning the breakfast show and doing stuff. And there was one day that we were down there and there was a big meeting was called. And then I said, oh, I'll go then. He went, no, this is going to affect you. And the meeting was that GCAP had to sell a number of stations. And they included Mercia and BRMB and Beacon and Wyvern. So I thought, oh, here was me thinking that I was getting this new job to work for GCAP. My contract was with GCAP. So when they became global, they had to sell a number of stations because they had too many stations in the Midlands. So actually, when I actually started that breakfast show, for the first 12 months, the stations weren't owned by anybody. They were kind of run by GCAP on the logistics side, but they weren't really allowed to put any kind of creativity or any production control into it. So again, we had completely free reign. I was on a breakfast show where suddenly I've got a producer and a travel presenter in the studio and a newsreader. And so I'd gone from doing a breakfast show on my own to a double-header breakfast show to a breakfast show with a bit of a team, but not part of a big group that I was hoping for. But it all turned out right for the end because those stations were bought by Phil Riley and David Lloyd, Orion, who then brought them and eventually rebranded them to Free Radio, where I stayed for many a year.
I suppose that void of no ownership, it's quite similar to how Communicorp have franchises for certain global stations. Like I think they've got the Capital for Wales, Scotland, things like that. It feels weird. Was it weird not having like an owner, or did that not really have much control on your content of your show?
It didn't really have much control because I was surrounded by radio professionals and we knew what we were doing. And the people that were there were the people that were running the stations when it was still part of GCAP. And, we still had to be answerable. We couldn't go completely off the rails. But yeah, in a way, it was kind of like being run as a franchise. So you'd got the name, but you were allowed to do anything else really. And I did get to do bits and bobs. In fact, I used to do weekends on BRMB, which is exciting. Again, another radio station that I'd sent demos to back in the day that had rejected me. And then suddenly I was doing breakfast show on Mercia and then a Sunday afternoon show on BRMB, which was quite exciting.
It's like BRMB is still. I mean, it's come back now, but in a sort of smaller scale way. Not as good as it used to be.
The names come back, but is it really BRMB? It's a different frequency. You got Les Ross on there, who's a BRMB legend.
I think back in the day, and so many presenters we've interviewed have also said that BRMB was one of the stations that they aimed to be on at some point in their career.
Yeah, which is really weird for me because living in the Northwest, I couldn't actually listen to BRMB. So I'd heard of it, but never really heard it unless, you're a complete radio geek and you go down to Birmingham for the day just to listen to a radio station. I mean, who would do that back in the day? Yeah, I did that as well. Many days. I'd just go to London for the day and I'd just literally walk around listening to the radio because it was the only way, it's before it was available to listen to online, which seems like, it makes me feel like a really ancient, a time before radio was online. Is it gas powered? But yeah, that's what you had to do. It's like when I used to go to America and I used to just listen to American radio station. We'll just stay in the hotel room today and just listen to this. Just listen to Z100. Well, you're in New York. Yeah, well, it'll still be there. It's out the window, isn't it?
To be fair, I love whenever I go to a new city, it sounds really sad, but I love going to radio buildings. I think when I went to Liverpool for the first time, I went up the Radio City Tower and I went to where Capital was and where they had their stations, and there's something magical about it. It's like visiting a theme park or opening the Christmas present, but for radio people. It is.
I was covering Andy Crane's show. I've covered it for a few weeks now. In Manchester, Greatest Hits Radio Late Show, which comes from Studio One at Castle Key, and I had a moment where I was going, I used to write in with demos to try and get a show on Key 103, and here I am now in that actual studio where I really wanted to be, presenting a national radio show. So you have to kind of slap yourself sometimes, but yeah, they are exciting, and there's nothing like being in a proper radio station.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've got a bingo card of every radio station building in London. This is true, and I've nearly completed bingo.
I can vouch for this.
What have you not gone? What have you not got?
Power.
Oh, right.
I feel like only radio geeks would have something like that. It's just, they're so magical to us, radio buildings. I don't think many other people get it.
I know, yeah, that's what it is. I tell you who else who really likes radio buildings, Peter Kay. Peter Kay, look, I don't think whether he does anymore, but when there was local radio, he used to go around local radio stations for car stickers and stuff. In fact, I interviewed Peter Kay once when he was starting off his career. We were doing a phoner. And after about 10 minutes into this phone, and this is when I was on Wish FM, he said, when's this going out? I went, tomorrow morning. He went, is it all right if I come in and do it live? Because he lived in Bolton. I went, well, you can if you want, but we can just do it. He said, no, I want to come in. So yeah, and true to his word, 8:00 the following morning, he knocked at the door, brought the milk in, and there was Peter Kay on the doorstep. You got any car stickers? Yeah. But yeah, but I think there's a lot of geekiness, but it's the Disneyland for radio people, especially the Lantern and the Capitol Building and BBC Broadcasting House, where I've not been to yet.
Oh, right. There's something magical about car stickers. I keep saying that word magical, but it's just I think I talked about this on a previous episode, but there was a feature on my local radio station, The Beach, where you could get driven to school in a branded Dacia Duster or something, and I signed up by myself. Kira's grimacing at this because she knows what's coming.
Did you win? Did they take you?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't really something
on your
you
own.
could win. I think. No, my dad accompanied me. It wasn't just a random street team member. Hopefully.
Oh, okay. I don't want to take anybody else. This is my moment.
I remember getting a little goodie bag full of pens and car stickers. I mean, my family didn't drive, so I had no use for the stickers, but it was just nice to have.
Did you not was your bedroom window just covered in radio car stickers? Because mine was. There was something about the smell. Oh, they smell so good, car stickers, radio car stickers. Oh, yeah. Something magical about this. There's the magical word again, the smell of a car sticker.
I only ever had one car sticker, and ironically, it was free radio.
You have a car? Did you have it because we were giving away 50 quid if you got spotted or anything like that?
Well, it wasn't me who had it. My parents had it. But like
Mhm.
they heard it and it was like, oh yeah, we can get some money off this. Never worked, but it's a nice thought.
Yeah, give it a go. Why not? Did they enjoy the smell of the car sticker, or did they not mention the smell of the car sticker?
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't ask.
Did you have a sniff of it yourself?
That's not something I
You don't know
did.
what you're missing. You don't know what you're missing. The smell of a radio station. Not any just car sticker, any old car sticker. It's got to be a radio station car sticker. Certain smell to them.
Should we move on to free? Because I feel like I've put us there anyway.
Yes.
I feel like this is where I come in here because that was very much my local station, and I remember you on it. So this is a weird scenario.
Oh, somebody remembers me. That's nice. So when was I on? Because I moved here, there, and everywhere on free. Was I mids?
Yes, you were
Mhm.
mid to start with. I got this
We were
wrong
discussing this earlier.
I got this
Yeah.
wrong. This is bad. I should admit this on a podcast, but we sort of checked the old free schedules because I was convinced you were on afternoons, but no, I got you and Dan Morrissey in the wrong order. So you were on
Right. Did
mid.
is it Dan Morrison that you wanted on this podcast?
No,
God damn,
that
we mentioned the wrong guy. We wanted Dan. He's on magic.
Oh,
no, I couldn't remember, but I knew you were on daytimes. So
Yeah.
that's my sort of childhood memory of you, is you being on daytimes for free.
Yeah, well, I popped around here, there, and everywhere. So I did 2 years on Mercia breakfast, and then they moved out of Coventry, and they moved the Coventry station into Birmingham with BRMB. And then at the time, I think that's when Orion took over. So they made changes, and I moved from breakfast to drive. So I was doing Coventry drive at the same time that Joe and Sparky were doing Birmingham drive. I used to wave at each other. We used to share content and ideas. And then at 7:00 every night, used to go and have a few wines. Joe Russell knows every bar in Birmingham and every special offer, whether it's Wine Down Wednesday or a Thirsty Thursday. Joe Russell knew every cheap deal in that city and led me astray. So yeah, Joe and Sparky were on at the same time. And I think after a year on that, because Orion was still just West Midlands, well, it was West Midlands and it was Gem in Nottingham, which I think it might have still been called Heart at the time. And they decided that they wanted me on the free network, mid-mornings, if you like. So I moved from Coventry Drive to free network mids, which is probably what, because are you Black Country Way? Is that where you were from? Yeah.
Yes. How did you know that?
Because I listen to this podcast. You know, it goes out. You know, people can hear it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I forget I say that. Yeah, I am Black Country.
Yeah,
Way,
you do give it away. Just don't give your home address out.
so the
Yeah.
postcode
Away.
is.
I've done that once. I've given my mobile phone number out on air. It was horrible. When I was at Signal One, we did a weekend in Ibiza. We had like the Young DJ of the Year, and the Young DJ won, and he used to go and do a set at Cafe Mambo. And as part of that, they had a little radio station upstairs. So I did 2 weekend shows, and I did the afternoon show. And I'd never had sangria before. I thought, this is very nice. And then when I went to do the show, because this is before we had like short phone numbers, I started reading out, oh, what are you up to tonight? Let me know what you're up to. You can send me a text on this number. I didn't even think about it. And then suddenly my phone started vibrating. I was going, who's these people? Andy, it's Dave and Kaz. We're going up Hanley tonight. Give us a shout. I went, oh my God, I'll give my own phone number out. But I didn't go back. I didn't mention it. I didn't refer. And I still have the same phone number. I didn't mention it on air. And so, thankfully, nobody's ever called back since. Just a couple.
Until now.
Until now. It's probably there. Probably somebody will dig that up from the archive. But yeah,
Hello, Linda.
Every link after that, I was correcting it with the right number. And don't forget, you can text me on this number. But yeah, how did we get onto that? Yeah. Don't jock and drink and present radio stations. No, never do
To be
that.
fair, some not to name any names, but some presenters at Shock have done that as a feature before. Testing
What?
different alcoholic beverages
I did a public safety podcast, again, when I was at Mercia, where it was like run with the Warwickshire Health something, and it was something to do with how alcohol affects your speaking and thinking. I had to drink this a full bottle of red wine. So I finished the breakfast show at 10, started drinking this red wine, have a glass and have a chat, have a glass, have a chat. It got to 10 o'clock and I'd finished this bottle of red wine. The podcast was over and I was still talking very normally and I still had perfect vision and I was still making complete sense. And then they got me a taxi to go home. And then the next thing I remember, I woke up on the floor of my living room like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So they should have waited for that podcast. Cut this bit out. It's really boring. I don't even know how I started on this story.
I think it was like sangria.
Yeah, that was the one. It was Joe Russell.
Oh, yeah. It's Joe Russell leading me astray. And yeah, sangria in Ibiza. Give my number out.
Because the last thing I remember of you on Free, and this is sure the last thing you did, was you did drive for all 4 regions.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember myself now what I did, because there was a lot of change when Bauer came in. So when Bauer came in, I was doing the network mids. And obviously that was part of a small network, the Orion network, and suddenly you're part of a bigger network and they've got their own mids. So that show went. But thankfully, I think it was Dan Kelly who was on Drive who moved to Breakfast. So I then moved to Drive and then Drive got networked. But I was still in contract. David Lloyd, I'm assuming you've read his books. David Lloyd, who is like a radio wizard, and he was the PD when it was Orion. And I remember him going, "Oh, your contract's up in about 9 months. Do you want an extension?" I was like, that's a bit odd, but yeah, I'm quite happy. Yeah, I'll have an extension. And I think he obviously knew what was going on and that we were going to be bought out. So he made sure that everybody was looked after, so that when Drive eventually became networked, I was still in contract. So I ended up doing evenings on Gem, but at the same time, Greatest Hits had started. Greatest Hits had just started, so they'd flipped the absolute frequency in Birmingham to become this new Greatest Hits. So Liverpool and Birmingham on FM had Greatest Hits, and then a few other DABs around the country. So this is the very early days of Greatest Hits radio. So I was actually still doing Drive at the time, but they said, "Oh, do you want a chance of doing a weekend show on Greatest Hits?" So I went, yeah, sure. The music is great. This is a good station. Chic, ABBA. Oh, I love all that. So I was doing Saturday afternoon on Greatest Hits, and then there was local Drive show in Birmingham for Greatest Hits, and I was doing evenings on Gem. And then it was Rachel New, who was doing Drive for Greatest Hits in Birmingham, decided she didn't want to do it anymore. And they said, "Do you want to, rather than doing Gem, do you want to come back to Birmingham and do Drive on Greatest Hits?" So yeah, I managed to just keep on in there. They tried to get rid of me, but they couldn't get rid of me. I just hung on in there. So yeah, I did Drive for Greatest Hits, and then that just snowballed. Obviously, we know the story of Greatest Hits Radio and Bauer buying more stations and flipping them into Greatest Hits. So I was at the start, I was just on Birmingham Drive, and then that became more of a bigger West Midlands drive when we took up some more frequencies that they flipped in the West Midlands. And then I think like Signal 2 flipped to become Greatest Hits, and then Gem flipped to become Greatest Hits. So my Midlands area, because obviously you have to have areas and Ofcom at the time before dereg. So something that 3 hours a day had to come from the Midlands. So that area just got bigger and bigger. And then Simon Mayo came to Drive. So they moved that local, now regional afternoon Drive show to afternoons from 1 till 4. So I was doing that for a couple of years. Actually did that during COVID, which was a wild time because we were still using the studios in Brindley Place. So where usually, if you know Brindley Place in Birmingham, you go out on a Friday night, it is heaving. There's restaurants and bars and everything. And I remember the end of that first week, in fact, I was still doing Drive at that time, and I came out of the studios at 7 o'clock on that Friday night, and there was nobody around. It was really cool. But I think there was such a strength in radio during that time, during that like year of COVID, when, you're told always to speak to one person, and then suddenly there you were. Everybody was stuck at home and people were working from home, and then suddenly radio kind of reinvented itself and became this big powerhouse, and people started doing shows from home, which I don't really think had been done before. So I think COVID was a real changing time for radio. People could start suddenly recording shows from home, doing live shows from home. And I remember that week before people were sent home, like the engineering team was suddenly firing off microphones on laptops and getting people online going, right, you can do the news from home. Here's your kit. You can do your show from home. Here's the kit. So that then when Simon Mayer came on, I went to do afternoons, and then that region got bigger and bigger. And then Debbie Mack was doing afternoons in the Northwest, and also the rest of the Greatest Hits network. So Debbie was technically doing the network afternoon show plus the Northwest. Debbie left to go to Canada, but because the breakfast show was coming from the Northwest, and then because shows were coming from London, it means the London shows and the Northwest shows, I could do them from Birmingham as long as something was coming from the Midlands. So suddenly my afternoon show from Birmingham became pretty much like half, 2/3 of the UK. So before I knew it, I was on air in London every day and doing a national show from what started out just being a little Birmingham local show. And then Ken Bruce came, and the snowball just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It was incredible. You could see it. You're like every few weeks, the amount of texts or calls you were getting in were just getting more and more, and you just knew that the station was going to be huge as it is.
So going back to the COVID things, if we had the COVID lockdown in the 2010s, 2000s, obviously the technology wouldn't really be readily available. Do you think it was a good thing being able to have the ability to do it all from home and having that freedom during the lockdowns?
Yeah, definitely. Radio had completely changed. I think the technology was always there, but I don't think it was used. So it would be interesting, like you say, if the technology wasn't there, what would have happened in COVID? I'm guessing people would still have had to have come in and, stayed apart from each other. It would have been interesting, but it definitely did change radio. And I think for the better. I think people found radio again, and people found new ways of doing radio, and they realized that, if you can do shows from home, then suddenly we can have more of these spin-off stations. You can have Magic at the Musicals or Absolute Radio Country, these niche stations that don't have to come from a radio station and don't have to be live. So even though there was more local radio stations were closing down, so there was less live radio and less stations for you to go and visit and get car stickers, more radio that wasn't there before. And I think radio could find a new niche, if you like. And I think technology was responsible for that. I think technology was the force behind that.
Going back to also what you said about Brindley Place, that's weird to me, thinking of an empty Brindley Place. I couldn't imagine a deserted place like Brindley Place, and I guess that was across the country at the time of lockdown.
Yeah, although to be honest, being in Brindley Place from a time when it was Orion, so when we first moved, especially when the Coventry station moved into Brindley Place, and you've got two radio stations coming from there with a breakfast show and a drive show. You got your sales teams, and because it was the hub for Orion, suddenly you got a marketing team, you got an accounting team. Literally everything you need to run a radio group was coming from that office in Brindley Place. It was a real hive of activity. And then if anybody was going out for an interview, it's like now if like One Direction came in, so they would visit Global and they would visit Bauer and they would visit Orion. And then, so everybody was coming in there, and Adam, who did the evening show, he was always going down to London to interview Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift, and it was a crazy time. And then suddenly when Bauer came in, and then you don't need an accounting team, you don't need a marketing team, a lot of other things. Suddenly then there were less people in the office, and then there were less programs come in, and suddenly you're networking a lot of shows. So slowly we're getting less and less people coming in. And then there was COVID, and like most days it was just me coming in. I think the breakfast guys were coming in the morning, but then they'd gone by the time I get in to do drive. So I was just rattling around this empty building. really strange. But yeah, to go back now, because we actually moved, Free Radio, Hits Radio as it then became, and Greatest Hits moved from Brindley Place up to Five Ways to a smaller building because of that. But incredible building, because we were on the 9th floor and I had this beautiful view over Birmingham city centre, which I've never had before from a radio station. To be able to broadcast to Birmingham and actually see it was nothing like it. So yeah, I don't know who's in that Brindley Place building now. I'd love to go back to some old radio buildings just to see what they are, because Signal One, that building got sold. I think that's like a £1 discount shop now, selling vapes and stuff. Well, all that used to be a carpet shop before it was a radio station. That's what that building used to be like. And then Rock FM, the church, I think that's flat now. I don't know about Radio City Tower. I'd love to know what they're going to do with that building, because that's
yeah,
like
they haven't really announced
building.
anything. They haven't really announced anything for that. It's just, stay tuned. We'll announce something soon. And it's been like nearly a year now, I suppose, and they haven't really announced anything for it. So who knows?
I know the old Mercia building is still a radio station. I think somebody moved into that. That was, I think, Community Radio, or somebody's moved into that one. Yeah, I'd love to go and have a quick look.
The old Beacon one's now flats. So, because I went past that the other day, but they had 2 different buildings. But I know that's flats now.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
It is.
But
It is. And then you don't need radio stations anymore, because all you need is a laptop and a microphone. And then, like, there you go. That's actually all you need. Just like this.
Exactly.
Just like this now.
This is an example of technology advancing. Like you said earlier, Josh, all 3 of us aren't in the same room or the same area. So
No. Is that because you two actually don't like each other in real life?
no.
Yeah, no. This is the final episode of my career so far. We will not be continuing with the podcast due to differences.
No, we
Told
very
you'd get
much like
cancelled.
each other. No, it's because I've obviously had to come down because I'm on work experience. Otherwise, we've both been Salford, but I'm currently at home.
So have you had to tell everybody to shut up? Going, right, you need to be quiet now for the next hour because I'm recording. Please be quiet.
No, so they've gone out.
You sent them out
for dinner. No,
with
they've
Linda.
gone out for dinner.
They've gone with Linda, haven't they?
No, they've not gone with Linda.
I'm taking the bins out.
No, but I'm going to catch up with them after it's finished, and I'm going to go out and join them. But no, it's a currently empty house.
It's quiet, isn't it? Like sometimes when I'm recording, because I do Greatest Hits Radio 80s now from home, I find, I'm just doing it now from the office, but my husband uses the office. So I find the best place to record is full on Harry Potter, the cupboard under the stairs where the coats are and the Christmas tree. I literally whack a table in there and a chair and my laptop on my mic, and the sound is dead. It's such a great sound, but no, nobody would know. Well, they do now.
There's something really clever about the fact that you can just stick a blanket over your head, plug something in, and then it sounds like you're in a studio with equipment that costs thousands of pounds.
Yeah, and it's just a laptop and a mic that costs like a few £100. I really wanted to take it on holiday because I like to go. We've got like a timeshare at Disney, and like one day I think, should I take my laptop and my mic with me and like just record some shows out there just to see what it sounds like, whether I could get away with it, because then I could go on holiday for like 4 weeks and just carry on doing it.
I suppose if it's all the same equipment, it shouldn't really make a difference where you are. You could be in Disney or Milton Keynes.
It's all down to the Wi-Fi, though, isn't it? If you're if you've got a dodgy Wi-Fi connection,
I feel like you've sort of mentioned it already, which is quite ideal, but you're now at Greatest Hits Radio 80s.
Yes, I am.
Which I didn't actually realise you did from home, so that's something I've discovered today.
Oh, maybe nobody knows that I do. No, I go into the Lantern every morning at 6 a.m. and do it live.
Is that my career so far exclusive?
Yeah. Yeah, it comes from home. Like the 60s, 70s, 80s are all from home. I have done them from the Lantern, and I've done them from Manchester. It's the joy. I can just I can do it from wherever I want. We use something called Zeta to go, so everything that Bauer do is on Zeta, and it's just a web-based Zeta to go. So it's just like doing a normal radio show. All you need is a microphone and the music. I've got the music provided, and I've got a microphone. So yeah, do it from home, from underneath the stairs, like Harry Potter. which is like full. So it was really weird because I went out with my cousin a couple of weeks ago. He's a couple of years younger than me, and she used to come round. And I used to like play radio presenter. So like we had a loft conversion. Mum and Dad have a bungalow. We had a loft conversion, which was kind of, it was supposed to be converted into an office where, you know, I could do homework and stuff. But like when I was little, I set up a like pretend radio station in there. So my cousin used to come round because she wanted to be an actress. So she'd come round and she'd be my guest, and I'd interview her about the new play that she was about to be in. She did do a walk-on part in Emmerdale though a few weeks ago. She went on to be a drama teacher, so close. But I did better. So yeah, it was really weird that we were talking about it. She went, "Isn't it funny that like when we were kids, like you used to pretend to be a radio station, and then you were like just doing it from home, and then now look at you, you're on an actual radio station, and you're just doing it from home." So like, see, it was all there all along. I've been practicing since the age of 8 to do a radio station from home, and here I am, full circle.
Maybe get
Although
her back
you can't
on.
beat going into a studio.
Maybe get her back on a show at some point. Just interview about her part in Emmerdale.
Yeah, that was about 10 years ago. She runs a coffee shop now and does some teaching. So yeah, she's not much to say, but she has the radio station on in the background.
So welcome back. We've been talking about things that, for our employers' sake, we can't keep into this podcast.
But we had fun talking about them. So
oh yeah, it was really fun. But unfortunately, none of you will ever be able to hear it. But going back to Great Hits 80s, how did it feel? Obviously, by the end of the afternoon show you were across like 2/3 of the UK, and then launching a brand new radio station spin-off. How did that feel for you? Was it quite like a taking a step back moment?
it was really weird, actually, because I think in the back of my mind for years, I knew that D-Reg was coming, and I was doing the afternoon show. I thought, I've got Ken Bruce on before me. I've got Simon Mayo on after me. I thought, it doesn't take a genius to work out I'm sticking out here like a sore thumb. The figures were really good, though. I mean, like, really good. So I thought, maybe they might just take a chance and go, we're going to keep you on the afternoon show. But I thought, well, I'm not a celebrity. So I kind of knew what was coming. I didn't expect it to happen so soon, because I think D-Reg happened on the Monday. And then that Monday evening, we were all called in for meetings to go, well, it's happening now. But they were really good. I was still in contract till the end of the year. And then, so that was at the end of last year. So it was about a year ago, actually, since I finished doing the afternoon show. And they said, well, we want to put you in for some Christmas cover because we don't want to lose you. You did a good job in the afternoons. And then we've got something coming on in the new year, but we can't tell you. But be patient. Give it to like February, March, and we've got something that we think you might be interested in. They went, if anything else comes up in the meanwhile that you think is good, go for it. But there is something for you if you want it, but we can't tell you what it is. Thankfully, though, I've had a big birthday this year in January. So I thought, right, I'm going to take the first few months of the year to go on I need to say something else. I need to swore then. I'm going to take a shed load of holidays.
We can bleep it out.
Shed load of holidays. No, because that'll make me sound like I've said something worse. You think I've called Linda a massive something. Don't put a beep in there. So I took the opportunity, because I've literally, from finishing my degree, haven't stopped working. I've been on the radio all my life. I mean, even when I was doing my degree at the age of 20, I was still doing some like overnight shifts on Radio Air in Leeds, and I was doing RSL. So really from the age of 20, I've been working non-stop, going from breakfast show to breakfast show to breakfast show, and then moving around other shows. So that I'm actually going to take a little bit of time to just do some traveling and like do nothing for a bit. And it was good because the last part of last year I was still getting paid for doing nothing. And then it got really weird, and I was listening to radio. This is like February, and I was like, I'm not doing anything. And I'd spoken to people, and then there were a few chances, and there was one opportunity that came up with a radio station that eventually ended up getting networked. You can probably work out maybe where that one was. So yeah, and then I was getting a little bit jealous of people on the radio, and then you start critiquing people and going, well, I'd do better than that. I used to be able to do that. I was still doing my podcast. And then I was kind of like filling the gap of doing audio. And then I got the phone call to go, right, we said we got something for you. The money's not great. Well, conversations always start like that. But we want to start these new stations. They'd already started Greatest Hits 60s. It was doing well. It said we want to do 70s and 80s. I thought they were going to say we want to do 70s, 80s and 90s. I thought, they're going to ask me to do like the 90s afternoon show or something. But that became hits. And they went, yeah, we want Greatest Hits 80s, which we think is going to be the bigger of them. And we want you to do the breakfast show. So I was like, suddenly your confidence in yourself goes back up, because when you've not been on air for a while, you're kind of like, I forgot how to do this. Am I still good enough? Am I being left behind? Am I being forgotten about? So to be given a national breakfast show, and like you say, it's over 500,000 listeners to that station now, gave me that confidence I needed, but also filled in that creative itch of making radio. I'm not doing wild, crazy phoners and stunts or anything like that, but I can still be creative, whether it is just with a 10-second link about a song that was released 40 years ago. It just gives you that challenge to come up with different ways of talking about, technically, which are the same songs and the same artists, because Greatest Hits Radio 80s, we're not going to start playing anything new. So you've really got your work cut out to try and keep people listening and to think of different ways of talking about the music that you're playing. But I kind of like lean into that kind of 80s nostalgia a little bit as well, whether it's TV from the 80s or because, I was at school in the 80s, stuff like that. So yeah, being back on the 80s, still a national station, still doing cover on the national station as well, kind of gave me that confidence in myself. You do get a bit of a kick when you find out that you're no longer wanted, because you think, well, what was I doing wrong? Was I not good enough? But, radio has changed, especially huge brands like that, where people want names on that they know, that they are household names on that station, and I wasn't.
I like the idea that Greatest Hits Radio 80s would play music from outside the 80s. I feel like it'd be a great idea, just like on April Fool's Day, they accidentally, well, not accidentally, but like they play like Lewis Capaldi or something.
Yeah, or somebody in their 80s. Just have lots of people who are in their 80s. Greatest Hits Radio 80s. It is Edith. What? Linda.
Not again.
Oh no. See, the theme of this podcast is Linda.
That's our next guest. On the next episode of My Career So Far, we'll be speaking to Linda to get her side of the story.
I don't know any radio presenters called Linda. Why aren't there any more radio presenters called Linda? Call now if you can think of any famous Lindas. I can only think of Linda from The Traitors, who's a bit of a celebrity. Funny, she's not on the radio station. Thought somebody would have picked up her for a gig. Linda from The Traitors.
Yeah, when the name Linda came up in this conversation, I did think of Linda from The Traitors.
I always say, people, if I see a lady with a dog, I always call her Linda. I don't know why. Like, Linda's got to pick up the dog poo. I don't know why. Linda.
What about man with a dog? Do you give them a name? Or is it
Colin?
Just Colin.
Yeah, Linda and Colin, without a doubt.
That's a nice couple.
Linda and Colin with their golden retrievers. Yeah, I don't know why. I just
feels like a target audience for like a radio station. On certain radio stations where they say, "Oh, it's more in the BBC," where it's like you have to target this type of demographic of people. It's almost like saying
Radio Linda.
Talk to Linda and Colin.
I did work at a radio station once where we had that, and it was when it was all about the yummy mummies. We're going to broadcast into the yummy mummies, and here she is. And there was like a cardboard cutout that was in the corner of the radio station. We had to talk to. I don't even know what her name was. Probably Linda. She always used to go to Tesco or Asda, Waitrose and M&S. We were a bit too posh for her. I mean, she definitely didn't go to Aldi or Lidl. She was definitely a Tesco girl, and she loved watching. What would she watch? She'd be watching Strictly Come Dancing. The kids were 5 and 7 years old, and that's who you had to talk to. But the kids were 5 and 7 years old for about 4 or 5 years. Did these kids not grow up while they did Simpsons?
It's like Peppa Pig.
Yeah. Just never grow old.
I'm trying to imagine this cardboard cutout in my head now of what it could look like.
I can't tell you what happened to that cardboard cutout over the years, but she was defaced not by me, but many people with a permanent marker. Our yummy mummy, suddenly she's got a mustache and a beard now, and goodness knows what else drawn all over, and football shirt. Why is she wearing a Wigan Athletic football shirt? Not that it was a radio station in Wigan. Obviously. But I suppose it was a good idea at the time. It's like, because, those radio stations back then, the smaller radio stations, there were a lot of people like me who it was their first gig in radio. So if you had to, you were being told to talk to one person, if it helps direct, then yeah, it works. I've never worked for a bad program director. Every single program director that I've worked for has always been really good to me, has always given me advice, and has taught me different things that I've kind of like picked up and remembered along the way, because everybody's got their own ideas. And it's always really strange. Suddenly you're doing a breakfast show for one program director, and he's snooping you and coaching you every day after the show. Do this, do that. I don't like the way you do something like that. And then suddenly you've got a new program director coming in who's got a completely different set of ideas. So what you were doing before that was brilliant is suddenly, what are you doing that for? Why are you doing that? Do this, do that. But you've got to take that advice and still be yourself. But I've never worked for a bad program director, even ones that put cardboard cutouts in the studio.
Oh, that reminds me, and this is in the Radio City Tower, when Rossi used to be up there. I think must have been under GHR when I saw it, and there was a cardboard cutout of himself in the studio.
Of himself?
Yeah. There was he used to have a cardboard cutout of himself.
Just in case he forgot what he looked like.
Forgot who he was.
Yeah.
On the radio.
I was like, sometimes in the morning you look a little bit rough, but if you've got that cardboard cutout there, if you go, I look great this morning.
This is what you're aiming for.
Yeah, yourself.
Well, you mentioned about advice, and I feel like that leads on nicely to the last question, which is the question we asked everybody, which is, if you could go back to your younger self and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think it would be have more confidence in yourself and be a little bit more ballsy. I think if I push myself a little bit more, I was always kind of like, I'd prefer to just kind of like blend in and keep in the back of the crowd, and especially now where it's such a competitive industry, you can be as brilliant as you like, you could be the next Scott Mills. But if you're not pushing yourself and program directors don't know that you're there, then you're not going to get anywhere. So I never had that confidence in myself. So I think have more confidence and push yourself out there. No, don't get annoying and be phoning people every 10 minutes or emailing people going, "Have you got my demo? What do you think of my demo? It's a new demo." But you've got to be out there, and you've got to know that people know that you're there and you're readily available, but you've got to have confidence in yourself. Even if you don't think, even if you're not that good. Some people who aren't that good have been out there and they push themselves and going, "I'm available to do overnights this weekend. Put me on, give me a try." You've got to do that. So that's what I would tell myself. Just have a bit more confidence in yourself.
Perfect way to end the podcast. I'm sure Linda will definitely be listening to this episode, and I hope.
Oh, she's always listening, is Linda. She'll be around your letterbox now, listening through what they're talking about now. He's always talking to radio people. Why is he always talking to radio people? Why is he talking to himself? What's he going on about? Car stickers. What's he on about?
Yeah, well, the next episode of My Career So Far, we will be speaking to Linda. No, we will not. But
It'd be like a director's cut, Linda's cut. Sorry, I interrupted your fabulous ending. The edition.
No worries. But Andy Goulding, thank you very much for coming on My Career So Far.
Thank you so much. It's been really good fun. It's been like therapy.
And that is what a lot of people say about doing this podcast.
Do I pay you? Invoice now.